All right. I'm so excited to be having the first ever podcast with two of the coolest guys I know on the planet, near and dear to my heart. What you've been through, what you did to protect us, what you continue to do for your country and for your city. But today we're podcasting. Our studio is under the Warriors Rest Foundation, 50,000 square foot building. The things that are going to go on here is going to be tremendous for a lot of people, a lot of inspiration. I couldn't be more excited to be honored to be here. But before I get to Brett Key, who is the founder, CEO of Warriors Rest, I'd like for Major Ed, who I've been friends with for going on 8 years now. I've seen the tears. I've seen just the raw emotion of what it is to see other service members that need help, and you're just waking up every morning trying to say, "How can I help the next one?" Um, but Empower the Veterans is a little bit unique in some of the things that they're doing, and bringing it under the roof of the Warriors Rest Foundation. And so I really wanted Ed, if you could just explain a little bit about Empower the Veteran and what your vision is and kind of where you came from, because you've had a lot of experience. And one thing you said to me is that with your days, great days at Folds of Honor and all the great things they're doing, was that they were focused on sort of the children of fallen soldiers or injured, which is completely commendable. But there was something in your heart that said, what about the warfighter? What about the one that was actually in the what's going on with that piece of the family dynamic? And so you said that to me like 6 or so years ago, just kind of something you had in your heart, and here you are today with Empower the Veterans. So can you just expand a little bit more on what you've got going on and how what's the trajectory?
Well, I think the most important thing that you can take from that is, first of all, what a great day to be an American, and what a great day to celebrate freedom right after Independence Day. 249 years we've existed here with, uh, the constitutional elements that make us who we are. And we are just grateful that we can be a part of that, especially the Army, which has been around for a long time, and of course had its birthday. And it just makes everything unique. And that was really the limelight or the focus of mine when I first started to look at the philanthropy space and look at what we could do for the warfighter specifically. Because for us, what we were seeing was the epidemic of suicide and the mental health stressors, combat anxiety, or the combat stress, and all of the other things that go along with that, hypervigilance. I understand all those terms. Meaning, before even today, we were talking about post traumatic stress
Hmm.
and the different words that label us in some way, but reality don't define who we are. And that was one of the purposeful things, and not only working with Brett Key and others, that for us it's identifying and taking away the stigma of knowing that what, at any time you can go get help. And that to me was really the focus of my life, and my focus and work was, what can I do to empower someone, to give them an opportunity to empower themselves with not only employment, housing, and the unmet needs, but all of it ultimately revolves around faith,
Yeah.
and the faith that we have for our country, the faith that we have for one another, and the faith that we have for really why we're all here, and that is our loving God who loves us, who cares about us, and who empowers us to be the best that we can be. And so, to me, that is the element of focus. And I'm just grateful that I have men that can share in that same limelight and understand that, what the focus is, to never leave anyone behind on the field of battle or here on the home front. And that's what we're all about.
Right. You know, I that God, family, country just speaks volumes to me as someone that lived most of his life without any kind of faith. I was a professed atheist for 42 years of my life. I look back now and go, I was just ignorant. You know, I didn't even want to read the Holy Bible. And then once I started reading it, I just I couldn't make it not make sense. Every page I kept reading, it made more sense to me. And so I think that there's a hunger right now going on for that structure of God, family, and country. And so I think that it's nice to see guys that have put a uniform on that believe that there is a higher power out there, that there is something that is sort of looking over us, and we can put that full armor of God on. But when you say that, just like when you were in the military and you were in the FOB and you were putting your uniform on and everything that you needed to go out into the field, it was the full armor of God. It was the full armor of that day. And I'm guessing you wouldn't leave out a piece that, a breastplate or whatever it is that you're going to need on that mission. You're not going to leave that out because you might need it. And I think from a biblical standpoint
that a lot of times we don't really understand what it means to put the full armor of God on daily. And it's just do those things and you'll feel the difference. But thank you for that introduction. Ed, and I know we're going to talk more about it because I know you want to talk a lot about the business side of entrepreneurship and what the unique piece of that is with Empower the Veteran. But Brett, I mean, man, the vision you have here, and we were talking earlier, just like, you look at the whole platform or arena of nonprofits, and there's only so many dollars that go around. And a lot of times when you're in a small city, and hey, we won an NBA championship, right? We're OKC with a title, so we're not that small. We're getting bigger. However, there aren't that many dollars to go around. The agencies and things like that. You had this vision. You said, why are we separating the ponds? Is there a way to bring everyone together and bring it under sort of one roof that everybody does good in what they do? And so I can't wait to hear what you started this and then where your vision is and where it's going.
Yeah, so I can tell you where we started with this and where it's at right now and where we want it to go there's such a huge jump in there that we've had over the last couple of years. But kind of where it got started is I did just shy of 27 years with the Oklahoma Highway Patrol. And I always say, it's like, I said, they taught me how to dry fight and shoot, and they did a good job of it. I went home, every day or every night, whatever shift I was on, to my family. But, what they didn't tell me was what the job was going to do to me mentally and emotionally. Right. We trained for a lot of it. My partners and myself and those other first responders we worked with, we did our job. We did it to the best of our ability. But then we had to go home, and that just at that time was not talked about, right? So that's kind of where all this came from, with the traumas and stuff that I went through, that I saw my partners and stuff go through. It just something had to change. We were seeing too many men and women struggle with addiction. Too many first responders, and it's the same on the military side. Too many of them take their own lives. And so, we started kind of asking the question in some of the groups that we were working with at the time. So what does that look like? What does change look like? How do we break that stigma that Major Ed brought up a while ago of reaching out for help and saying, hey man, I'm not okay. And there's a lot of groups out there doing it now. But the one thing we say is that two things. One is it's okay not to be okay. It's just not okay to stay that way, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And for yourself or for your family, and we'll dive off into the family. I mean, we can do episodes on what it does to the family and the relationships and marriages.
Just because we discussed this, but give a little piece of this that might be different than the veteran that's deployed.
Yeah.
You have FaceTime now, you have Zoom, you have some of these things, but you guys have to go home and face the families.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that in a bad way, but that's, you don't want to tell them what you maybe saw that day.
Yeah. And I think that's what, there's always, and you'll hear first responders talk about it. We all have a date, right? Major Ed's got a date. He can tell you when the life-changing incident happened to him, right?
Oh.
We all have a date or have multiple dates and stuff. And I think one of the differences with the military as opposed to the first responders is when my date happened, I had to turn around and go directly home and talk to my wife and deal with my kids and stuff like that, right? There's not that break in there if something happens overseas where you've got a little bit of break. It's just as traumatic and everything else, but it does give you a little bit of time to process it depending on what it was. first responders aren't always given that opportunity to decompress or to really come to grips with what it was that they had to do or what they saw or that type of deal, right? So you're walking in the garage door and your wife's standing there, your kids come up, and you've just got to figure out, okay, how do I keep going, right? How do I, current event, right? You've got the floods and stuff down in Texas.
Yeah.
And you've got, there's been a couple of pictures that have been shown. One was, I believe, of a Texas state trooper, and another one was another law enforcement officer. And his uniform is just soaked.
He's got his hand.
Right.
He's got his hands in his, like his head's in his hand. Right?
Yeah. And
big guy.
And he leaves from there. And I don't know if the gentleman had a family or not, but he's got to go home. And he walks through the door, and his family's there. They're going to want to know what's happened. The kids, depending on how old they are, they want to know what happened, and how does he say what he just saw?
Well,
right? Or does he?
And not
right?
to get graphic, but like that's not a great scene when you're searching. Face it, that was probably search and recovery at that point.
Yeah,
you were praying for somebody to be in a tree that still needs.
And again, not trying to get too much in the woods, but that's really the whole reason that Warriors Rest came to existence. Was we have to figure out a way to get our men and women the tools and the resources and the training to deal with those traumas and stuff that they see, maybe not day in, day out, but that they see through 5, 10, 15, 20, 25 years, however long it is of your career, to deal with those traumas, because at some point they're going to catch up with you, right? If you don't have those tools, if you don't have that open relationship, those open communications with your spouse and with your kids, if you don't, which is at really at the root of all of it, for me, and it was one of the big things that I was missing throughout my career, if you don't have that relationship with God and somebody that you can fall back on, then you very, very quickly you find yourself just kind of lost.
Well, something's going to fill that gap, and it's probably not going to be good.
Yeah.
So
that's where there was a group of us that got together and started kind of brainstorming and trying to figure out, okay, so what does this look like? The Highway Patrol at that time had done a pretty decent job of kind of going to the next, taking the next step. We had what we called a peer support team within the Highway Patrol. And at one time we only had one gentleman that did it, and he covered the entire state. And we literally almost killed him. With as much as he was running with stuff, right? And everything that we did then was proactive in nature. So we waited for something to happen, or we waited for somebody to get in a bad spot, and then we jumped in, which was great because it's more than we had been doing for the last 15, 20 years or whatever it was. So we at that time, we had a chief that had gone to a couple different events and had kind of heard about, hey, look, their departments are starting to implement peer support teams, and here's what the peer support team's done. And again, it was reactionary, but it was a start. And so they had gone in, myself and a couple other guys got an opportunity to be kind of on the ground floor of that. Unfortunately, we found that we were very good at it because of a lot of the things that had happened here in Oklahoma, and some of those being the natural disasters with the Maythor tornado, the other tornadoes that followed. For a lot of this, you can trace it back to the Murrah bombing, and different things like that. So as a state, as a whole, we've had our share of significant traumatic events, right? Large-scale traumatic events. So the patrol implemented this. We started seeing the change in our men and women within the patrol. That afforded us the opportunity to go work with some other agencies and some other nonprofits. Concerns of Police Survivor was a very integral role, played a very integral role in kind of the development and the reason Warriors Rest existed. Because we started getting to go to National Police Week up in D.C., which is held every May 11th through the 17th.
Okay, so just real quick, at this time, there wasn't a lot out, nothing organized, but they had this thing in D.C., but...
So National Police Week has been around. I'd have to go back and look at the year. I believe it was John F. Kennedy that actually implemented National Law Enforcement Day, which is May 15th of every year,
Okay.
right? And so they have National Police Week up in D.C. to where the National FOP and Concerns of Police Survivors, cops, got together. They put this event on, and what it is they use that week to recognize the law enforcement officers that have been killed in the line of duty the previous year.
Okay.
Right, their names put on the wall. There's certain events. They have peer support up there, and that's where we got the opportunity to go up there and do peer support for those families and their loved ones and their coworkers of the officers that have been killed in the line of duty.
Wow.
Right.
Yeah.
So we found that we were good at it, and we had a passion to do it. Right. And some red flags or some questions started being asked as we got up there. We found that there's a lot of departments that didn't have anything, right?
Wow.
A lot of even some of the big departments, major departments that just didn't have anything. And we would talk about debriefs. We would talk about different things like that. And they're like, what's a debrief? What's a peer? What's peer support? What's right? They just didn't have it.
Yeah.
And so from that, we kind of started to ask the question, okay, so we know what it is. We know it's effective, even if we're just reactionary. So what can we do to start getting that training and start building these peer support teams, whether it be in the big cities or whether it be in small cities regionally? And that's really kind of where the birth of Warriors Rest came from, is we saw a need. Myself and one of my old partners sat down and kind of threw it all down on a notebook, and we said, all right, here we go. Let's see what this does.
So, Ed, I mean, you from a veteran perspective, and I was talking with Brett the other day that, you know, after the military, you have TAPS, or Transition Assistance Program. Law enforcement and first responders really don't have a program like that, as Brett was explaining to me. So, is that true? I mean,
yeah, there's not most first responders when they retire, they either retire to nothing or they retire to something else that's just maybe a different department, or you know, a police officer will go work for a security company or something like that.
Right.
It's the same field. There just wasn't anything as far as going out and getting into real world, civilian world. There wasn't a transition program.
one thing that I've noticed with veterans, and again, I'm speaking from a civilian perspective, is, and I'd like for you to expound on this, is that idea of what you do when you go into the military is you're broken down, you're built back up. You know, you'd charge a machine gun hill with that brother and sister to the left and right of you. But then after you get out, that Superman cape kind of comes off. You got to go back to, and a lot of times people say, I've got it. And I hear this kind of on both sides, is that you don't talk about the weaknesses. And so when you get out, you have a little program, and everyone says, okay, I'm good. I don't need anybody's help. You know, it's not going to be me. But about 6 years later, after service, something seems to happen, and some people handle it better, and some people don't. But my question to you is that, I mean, you haven't talked about, I mean, many times you have, but not on this show, what you went through in your service, and I don't know if you can kind of like, how did you come through that? How did you heal those scars, so to speak, if you can speak on it?
Well, I think it was just stated earlier. The bottom line is, I knew exactly what I was going to do right after I got out of the military. I mean, I knew I had to have purpose. I knew I had to take care of my family, and I was prepared to do those things. I mean, the classes were not what motivated me. What motivated me is that I got to put food on the table. And what I was going to get as far as a check was concerned wasn't going to be enough. And so for me, the motivation was, after hitting a roadside bomb and going through almost a year and a half of recovery, that I began to really focus on the fact that a therapist told me, it's time for you to really kind of look at what's next. And the thing about it, that's not how it operates. It's all about stamping cards and about checking boxes and all of these other things, as opposed to really real life and saying, what is your niche? Where will you excel. And then really kind of having an inventory. The other thing that I'll say, and I don't think people are going to like it, but you know what? The disability and all of that other stuff with the ratings and all of the things that go along with what you do when you're getting out is broken. And I'll say it right here. Let me tell you the number one reason why it's broken. Financially, you can't live on what they're giving you in retirement for 20 years rendered service. It goes along with what the first responders have to go through too. So the deal is are you going to be stagnant when you get out and not have earning power, or are you going to have earning power? And in most cases, a lot of law enforcement officials or fire will go into that same industry that they were involved with just because they know it and their credentials and their experience dictate that. In the military, it's different because everybody's got a different job.
Right.
So you may not be able to do that or transfer that to the civilian sector, but what you can transfer is leadership qualities, character, honor, courage, all of those things that are just not just buzzwords, but what do they do? What do they represent? Understanding, like when I was in the military decision-making process, understanding what all that meant and how courses of action and how you make decisions and how you integrate into the civilian sector. How do you understand your health care and how you understand all of these deliverables? And for us, one of the things that I will say that I love about Warriors Rest, the only way that you learn all of that is by peer-to-peer support. Somebody else that's been
key.
through it, right?
That's real key.
And Brett, you can talk more about that, but that is something that is so connected with the both of us.
Yeah.
And that's what really drives me. So when I heard Brett talk about peer-to-peer support, that was really kind of what got me. I had not heard in the law enforcement world that kind of buzz until Brett really kind of talked about it and dug deep into it.
Yeah.
I actually heard about it within the military, but it was also more mentorship.
Yeah.
And mentoring somebody when they got out and having maybe a CEO of a company kind of take you under their wing and get you a job and give you purpose and give you some passion and give you some experience and real mentorship that really is a beacon of quality to understanding what your job may be.
Right.
And modeling and looking at someone and how they do things in the civilian sector and interpreting your skills from the military into that sector. And that to me is what we do at Empower the Veterans by placing people. Give you one quick example of somebody that's really cool.
Yeah.
And I hope that he listens to this podcast. Ray Villanueva is a prime example of that. He was in the Navy, submarines. I mean, smart guy, right? Then he goes into law enforcement here in Oklahoma City, and then now he's in real estate. But if you can look at his story, he's dual based, military and law enforcement or first responder based, and then all of a sudden he decides to go into real estate. You know what motivated him to do that? His wife. And that to me is what I think we were talking about with family, is that there has to be a forced integration. And I can't say that my life's been perfect in that way. I'll admit to that. I mean, the educational process of my wife and what I went through as an individual, there is disconnects because we didn't educate our spouses or talk about our issues. We didn't want them to know anything. And I'm going to just end with this piece because this is something that was brought up that really, I don't really get too negative, but I'm going to on this, okay? Let me tell you the problem right now with the deal in Texas is we got a lot of armchair quarterbacks that are out here spewing negativity when you have people that are dying and people that are on the ground doing a job.
Right.
And you know what? We're not perfect. There's a time and place to do that. In the military, it was done in the Vietnam War, and it's been done here too, even with the Iranian thing, that when we shot and put some bombs into those bunkers, that American people are great on social media about what the negativity is, but at the end of the day, they don't understand the whole process.
Right.
And there's a time and place to render negativity, but when we have a crisis, it's time to be on the right team.
Gotta be all hands on
And
deck.
that is what hurts us as people that are in these industries, in military and in law enforcement or first responder base, is we hear that negativity and it weighs on us when we go home.
Yeah.
And to me, an example is watching television when I got back after losing my leg, and looking at social media, and it was starting to kind of start humming a little bit now, you know what I mean? And
Right.
I got injured in '04, but after that, I could see where some of our veterans were coming back or military, active military, and they were hurt. And then you have people saying unjustly things about their service and about their sacrifice and about the war. That takes its toll on people.
Right.
And, you know, you saw it in Afghanistan when we withdrew. So all I do is caution the American people on understanding that at the end of the day, we're just human, just like them. And what we need to do is be cheerleaders for those that put on the uniform and go on the front lines and do what they do each and every day.
You know, it's you bring up a good point, something I think about, because you can get into these little, you know, videos of body cam and what did they do and what would you have done differently and how did they mess up and things of that nature. And one thing that I think that is just to that point is you guys train a lot, right? And I have a family member that essentially was accused of doing something they weren't supposed to do, and he's a police officer in Oklahoma City at the time, and so the guy was saying, hey, he was treating me wrong. He was in the police department. I want to file a complaint. And so my family member said, honestly, it happened so fast. I relied on my training. And when they reviewed the body cam, it was perfect. He did everything he was supposed to do. Now, from a civilian look at it, I go, well, could you have done this, or could you have done that, or could you have done that? When the gentleman that he had, you know, was in jail, he said, I want to file a complaint. You know, okay, sir. Just want to let you know that we're going to go review the body cam. And as soon as that was, he said, okay, never mind, I'm good. But even at that, when somebody that's not trained sees that and goes, well, I would have done this differently.
Yeah.
How can you say that if you've never put yourself in that situation? Yeah. If you've never been going on 18 hours with no food, or maybe a little bit of food, a little bit of water, and you're reacting and you've seen some horrible, horrific things, and you want to get home to your family as well, and you're reminded of your family as you're doing these things. And in Texas, you've got, I don't know if you've been by Russian water, but it's pretty impressive, and it's scary, right? So I like what you're saying, because we do need to realize that, and that we can come back and analyze something after it's over, but when we're in the battle of it, and 48 hours is not out of it, we're still in it. You know, those guys are still, and they're not. You guys aren't robots. You look at it, you listen to it. You know, we need to be cheerleaders. That's a great point. That's a really good point.
They're going to be those kind of staying on that topic. I mean, those first responders down there and the military guys and the Coast Guard, right? I mean, you've seen the deal with the rescue diver.
Yeah.
Phenomenal, right?
Exactly.
And he's a kid.
Courage.
He's 23 years old. 23 years. He's a kid.
You can do that, Brett.
Yeah. No.
I've seen you do abs.
First off,
your ab workouts
nothing
incredible.
out of a helicopter, and nothing.
Planks
And nothing around rushing water.
Okay.
But you know, it's incredible. But don't think that mentally and emotionally that isn't going to take a toll on that young man,
Yes.
right? What he saw that day and what he did or continues to do, but those first responders, they're still in mission mode. At some point, they're going to come down from that.
That's right.
Yeah.
And I will tell you, excuse me, you know, this is one event, and what is that young man's just the start of his career?
Yeah.
For some of the
23.
first responders down there, this might have been their first significant. So now, you know, we talked about retirement a while ago and preparing to go out into the civilian world. That one of the other missing components of that is they might make it through their career, 15, 20, 25 years without going to a counselor and everything be okay, but it's still there. Those scars and the things that they've done and the things that they've seen and that they've heard, it's still there. And if it doesn't, you know, the goal is not just to retire. The goal is to retire with my family still intact, with my marriage still intact.
That's right.
And with my mental and emotional health, my physical health, all that stuff still being intact, and retire happy.
Right.
And there's so many of our first responders, and even on the military side, they'll go through a career and they'll muddle through it. They will get through it because that's what God put them on this earth to do.
Mm-hmm.
Right? They'll get through it. But what does it cost them? Right?
Yeah.
What What does it cost their marriage? What does it cost them being a mom or dad or their family? That's why what we're doing here and that's why this is so important, right? We want them to get through that career in one piece with everything still intact and be able to enjoy at some point. It's hard for a first responder, hard for a military guy to retire, to really retire,
Yeah.
right? Most of us retread.
Yeah.
We don't retire, we retread.
You find another team, right? Because you're used to that team.
At some point, you're going to retire.
Yeah.
We want you to be in the best possible mental, emotional, physical, spiritual shape that you can be in. And that's vital. I mean, that is an absolute must. And there has never been an emphasis put on that. Right.
And a movement, right?
And it does. It needs to be a movement, right?
That's
we are
right.
starting to see the stigma change nationally in the first responder world. We're starting to see that stigma change. But we haven't had that movement yet. We haven't had the right tools and the right people in place. And I'm going to circle back around at what you had said earlier about it's not going to take Warriors Rest can't do it on their own.
Mm-hmm.
Empower the Veteran can't do it on their own. There has to be at some point groups have to come together. Pride and ego got to be dropped.
Yeah.
And we have to figure out let's get this movement started.
Yeah.
Right? We got to get in the freaking fight. And that's where all of us are going to make an impact if we do stay in our own lanes and we just try to do it ourselves, right? We're going to make an impact. We've saved lives. Warriors Rest,
Right.
my staff, the peers, the counselors, the people that they've saved lives. But man, the freaking impact that we can make if we could get everybody on the same sheet.
Well, what's
music.
that saying? Is you can be as successful as you want to be if no one takes the credit.
Yeah.
You know, and I mean that's.
Yeah.
I mean, kind of going back to the whole God thing, God, family, country is like at some point we just have to take care of one another, and whether you have your name on the wall or somebody, like doesn't matter. I mean, really, like I'm reading Ecclesiastes right now for the many times, but Solomon is just looking at it going, I had everything. I had every amount of horses and, kingdoms and all this, and none of it mattered. None of it mattered at the end of the day. The only thing that mattered is the relationship with God and trying to help another human being.
And that's where the movement's going to start.
Yeah.
Right? At the end of the day, it's not going to be Warriors Rest. It's not going to be Empower the Veteran. It's not going to be, and there's some great groups out there, right?
Yeah.
There are some phenomenal groups out there, and they're making a difference. But at the end of this, it's going to be God's the one that's going to do this.
Amen.
No, brother. And you know what? You're absolutely right. Let me just tell you how I got motivated on this. I went on my first ride along. You'll love this. I needed to be with the Highway Patrol, but I did it with the Oklahoma City Police Department. And my friend Chaplain Teddy.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I know Teddy.
You know Teddy. Well, and then he got me connected out there with the other group, with the folks with the fire department. And when you see what they do on a daily basis, that was just a little snippet of it. That's what I think the American people, they need to see the real lives that are out there that are doing all of this stuff. No one's going to get anything perfect, but at the end of the day, what we want is productive citizens when they're ending their life at the end of their lifespan, and we want them to be productive citizens and continue to maybe do something else in those golden years and maybe retire and like you said, live your faith, but think about the fact that from even a law enforcement official, how they have to live with some of those things that they've done and live with them for the rest of their life. And it is only the time, this is a godly thing. This is where I learned it. I would do these hospital visits, and all these vets that were passing or about to pass, everything revolved around their movement. Their end of life is coming, and they had to come to Jesus. Some that had never even been around Jesus.
Yeah.
And the thing about it is that the ministry behind it, you could see just this weight lifted with the fact that they were able to talk about it. And that was what we didn't really realize from our World War II veterans, how much they took in and they never gave out in action or thought process about what maybe they went through. And so that is why we're doing something change agent. On the other hand, social media has dictated the fact that there's opportunities for us to be connected with one another,
Yep.
but also be negatively impacted by one another too.
Yeah.
And so that's why I think there's a lot of suicide of young people, a lot of,
Yes.
of issues with, you know, many stressors that they're going through culturally.
Mhm.
And I think that that translates into some of these other professions.
Well, if we don't stand up as you know, we talk about, oh, don't talk about your weaknesses. You're not a man if you don't. That's completely false. I think if you don't stand up and look out for someone that's smaller than you, that's when we lose. That's when we lose all of our humanity. And so, because I'm going to struggle with what I had to do today to help somebody smaller than me, I'm going to lean on Jesus to help me after that, right?
Yeah.
But me going to another brother in Christ and saying, "Listen, Brett, I'm having trouble. Can we just talk?" You know, I don't want to go look at pornography. I don't want to go to the strip club. I don't want to go drinking. I just need you to talk. That's where we got to get. If that's to me, that's a real man, because I'm doing that because I don't want to go home to my kids or my wife and be drunk or be just looking at a bunch of, you know, and then I'm going to not be right. I won't. I mean, so it's a lie by the enemy, you know. But we're getting close on time, but I want to try something because this facility is being built out that we're in right now. But I just want to say, okay, you know, we talked a little bit about I think they're almost monetizable terms, the 22 a day, PTSD. I think sometimes they're an advertisement and they're a way to make money. And I know I'm probably gonna get in trouble for saying that, but I just see it and feel it, because I don't think that it's post-traumatic stress disorder. It's post-traumatic stress that can be dealt with. It doesn't have to become your identity. And I'm asking this, so let me just ask this to you. And what I want to do is say, okay, if you were dealing with something and then you met Brett or somebody at this facility, what would happen when Ed or somebody is intake into your facility? What are we going to do here? What's going to happen in this building? So if
Well, so
I'll let Brett answer that.
yeah.
well, I mean, I probably glossed over it, but I'm
No,
That's a
and,
great
and
question.
and I think that's one of those things. And look, we have to be. I have to be very careful. We have to be very careful. This is not a treatment facility, but what it is, it's going to be a place where there's resources to get people headed down the right track, right? Whatever that is, whatever it is that they're struggling with. But the crux of it, just like you said a while ago, like one of our sayings that we have here is healing begins in courageous conversations. That's where it's going to start. It's going to be simply sitting down with somebody that, whether you're a police officer, firefighter, or a veteran, or a paramedic, communications officer, corrections officer, ER nurse, flight nurse, whatever it is, right? To where your job is built around trauma. And you're never going to come into contact with somebody that's having the best day of their life, right?
Right.
You're coming into contact with them because something.
Wow, that's a great point.
Something has gone wrong,
It's
right?
maybe the lowest point in their life.
That may be, right? And that within itself, as a first responder, that wears on you.
Wow.
Just that, right? Because I'm taking, without knowing it, being conscious of it, I'm taking some
You're
of it on.
never going to meet somebody in your line of duty that's having the best
No.
day of their life.
I've yet
That
to.
is-
I did a lot of years working the road, and I never stopped anybody and them say, "Man, Brett, I am so glad you stopped me, Trooper. Thank you so much. Hey, sign here. Bottom copy's yours, right? Make sure you press hard, right? I never got to thank you for doing that, right? Or hey, put your seatbelt on here. Sign here, right?
Right.
It just doesn't happen. So, what we're wanting to do with this facility is that's where it's going to start. It's going to start with communication, and then we want to be able to have the resources and stuff here, and be able to take this out into the rural counties and to other states and
Yes.
stuff also. Okay, what is that next step for them, right? Is it, what are they struggling with? Is it, or for some, it's you know what, I can deal with the stuff at work. It's my finances, right?
Yeah.
I'm working a 10-hour shift, and then I'm getting off and I'm going and putting my security guard uniform on, and I'm going and working another 8-hour shift just so I can make ends meet, right? Firefighters and
Yes.
paramedics. You get out into the rural areas to where you have some of these paramedics and these EMTs and stuff, they're working for 2 and 3 companies. And there's some, I have, out of a gentleman's mouth, he hadn't had a day off in 2.5 months. Not a single day. Now I want you to think about that. He was working on an ambulance.
Oh
So
my goodness. There's no reset.
no good calls there.
There's no reset.
There's no reset.
And God says, I give you a Sabbath for a reason.
Yeah. Yeah. No, he had a family, married, had been married for 13 years, 2 kids. But that's what he was having to do financially just to stay afloat. Right? So for some, it might be finances. For some, it might be their fitness. As you get older, guys, I don't know if you know this, but it gets harder to get motivated to work out and to move, right? So it might be the fitness side of it. It might be nutrition, or maybe it is mental and emotional health. So having counselors on staff or close by to where we can say, hey, that's another thing, right? I'm not going to tell anybody to do anything that I haven't already done to help take care of myself.
Mm-hmm.
I go see a counselor. I'm not ashamed of it. I have no issues with it. I've got counselors that work with me now, so there are times they come in and just shut the door, and I can see the look on their eyes. They sit down at my desk. I'm like, okay, well, apparently I'm not in as good a position as I thought I was, right? So that's really what this facility is for, is to have those opportunities for them, working with other nonprofits, even bringing in some for-profit groups that can do different things with brain mapping and neurofeedback, and EMDR with our counselors is a big deal. Eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. And again, that's a whole nother episode, right? But that's big in the first responder world and the military world. The fitness side of it, we've got a gentleman named Jay Dawes out of Oklahoma State with the kinesiology department that's developing we're working on an app and some different things like that, to where we can put in the hands of these first responders simple workouts, right? That they can do before shift or after shift, or even as a communication officers, they sit at a radio the entire day for 10, 12 hours. So giving them some things that they can do during the day just to get up and move around and to get the blood flowing. Because at the end of the day, you can't separate your mental and your physical health, right? Mm-hmm. They both have to be symbiotic. They have to be working together. They both have to be in a good place, or you're out of balance. And that can be brought on by a number of things, and some of the things that I just hit on.
Right.
The other side of that is the family side. So my job, not my job, the trauma for my job and the way I handled it affected my family, right? It affected my marriage. It affected me being a dad, my interaction with my kids, or my non-interaction with my kids, right? How I dealt with things out in public. Anger and I've gotten a lot better, but anger was a outlet for me, right? And the anger that's just a reaction to other traumas and stuff going on and undealt with, right? That's just the reaction to it. But my house at certain times was not fun to be around when Dad got home, right? Very short temper. So giving first responders tools, giving the family members, giving them tools to understand what mom or dad is going through, right? Maybe even without having the conversations about, hey, tell me about what you saw today. That type of deal. So that's what we want with this facility, right? We want it to be a one-stop shop for first responders to come in, to have resources. And Ed and I's first conversation, we kind of sat down and started talking about this. There's so many veterans out there that either transitioned over into the first responder world, or were there and because of events got pulled into the military. So there's a huge crossover there. That is a huge crowd.
Right.
And that's one of the reasons that we decided to sit down and have the conversation. You want to talk a little bit more on that?
No, and I think you've hit it right on the nose. That actually was the connection that I saw. And I'm going to go back to the fact that people may not know that are watching. It all goes back to me on August 17th, 2004, when I hit that roadside bomb and lost my leg and went through all of the things that I went through. What I learned is when I came back, there was not really an integrated system of where to go. And I couldn't imagine in 2004 what the first responder group was all about in that regard, because there wasn't that type of movement. And then I remember the Dole Commission came into play, and the Dole Commission's role back then in 2007-8 timeframe in Washington, D.C. was to make sure that there was a seamless approach to when a veteran or I'm sorry, active military person came in, was wounded, hurt, whatever it may be, that there was a seamless approach to taking care of the family and the individual that was going through treatment,
Right.
whether it was at home or at the VA, and making sure that the VA and the Department of Defense were talking to one another,
Mm.
and that communication channels were going through. That to me is what this location's about. Is exactly those principles on a national scale and bringing them down to a local scale where everyone is at the table. My dream or my wish would be that we could gather here at Warriors Rest, and it's probably every quarter, and first responder organizations, nonprofit, veteran organizations coming together and just talking about the resources that are available. Because at the end of the day, what we're doing, and we talked about this before we got here today, is we're taking resources from one and then we're giving it to another. And in reality, we could maximize it by bringing in a bunch of resources and everybody benefiting
Absolutely.
from everything. And that to me is why this institution is here. That's why it's going to thrive. And our job is to find dollars to seed it
Right.
so that people will come. And you don't, we talked about faith, but some people may find faith when they come here.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that's not,
Well-
our ultimate goal, but it is for me. But that doesn't mean that we're going to infuse and that's going to be the approach. The approach is everyone can come here, feel safe, feel secure, and get something out of it. And a resource is what it's all about. And that saves lives and that improves lives. And it's all based on the fact that that's how we used to do business, is what we used to take care of one another. And that's the goal.
Well, I think what I was most impressed with about this place is a vision that I had probably 8 years ago when I was getting really heavy into the veteran and understanding the veteran community, was that what is the place that you do gather right after service. And I looked at the American Legion, I looked at the VFW, Veteran Foreign War, and I'm not taking away from that. But the one thing that I saw as a kind of an underpinning on a lot of that is alcohol. And so when I saw that facility, and it wasn't open to the community, it was only open to veterans. You could have a veteran bring a civilian in, and God love them, they're doing some good work. But I think they're overwhelmed. Number one, they're kind of getting underfunded as well. And I'll just say it. I've never known of a suicide situation that the person didn't have either a bottle of whiskey beside them, probably some pills and a weapon, right? So why are we going to a facility that is literally kind of contributing to that? And I know alcohol can dull the mind, but it's called spirits for a reason. And what spirits are you surrounding yourself with at that point? So when I saw this facility, and you always undersell this place, because when I saw it, I said, that's VFW 2.0 right there. Right there is what I've been thinking about for a long time. So integrated in with these facilities are going to be a place where civilians can come in, get a cup of coffee, talk about things, just as a normal coffee shop. But what that's going to do is going to put a lot of eyes on here. It's going to help fund the facility and the utilities so that it's not always reliant on donated funds to be in existence. If we do that right, we're going to be very, very successful. Everything has to be top notch. But what I saw was, I thought, okay, in the first responder arena and the stories of, man, I'm on a 10-hour shift and I'm still spinning. All right, where do y'all go? If you got a family, mom's going to expect you to come home, or you're going to go hit the gym, or unfortunately you might hit the bar or something like that. What if you had a facility that you could come in and there was staff here waiting for you? Go work out, Brett. Blow some steam off. Come by and talk to me before you leave and go home. Wow. What if you had that to your disposal?
Yeah.
Not just here in Oklahoma City, but in Tulsa, but in Perry, Oklahoma, in Muskogee, Oklahoma, and little facilities that are there for that first responder or veteran. And as you say, there's a lot of veterans that get into first responders after service. So there's so much to this building that we didn't talk about.
Yeah.
The hyperbaric chamber, the red light therapy, and I kind of say it's like, I haven't heard, the psychedelics being thought about, but we're going to not stop short of trying to collect data
Yeah.
to actually restructure the brain that has been traumatized. Just like if you had a broke arm,
Yeah.
you're going to have to fix that. And if it's not set properly, it's going to be deformed when it heals.
Yeah.
You're going to have to break it and reset it.
Yeah.
It's nothing different. The brain's the same way. It's a lot more complex. But that's what I love about this facility is it's a facility of inspiration. And although we're right positioned perfectly in an industrial area, but we're just a 7 iron from the capital, of Oklahoma City. We're right by. There's going to be some great things.
Yeah.
That's going to come through this facility. So,
and all those things you talked about, I mean, those are wish list items for us, but we are all firm believers that it can play an integral part in getting our first responders back to where they need to be, right? And I'll end on one more thing that first responders. I think the perception of first responders is that a first responder has to be perfect, right? They can't make mistakes, and I think the same way that Christians are looked at.
Ooh,
right?
Nice.
You have to be perfect.
Yeah.
You can't make a mistake. Well, look, I believe in God because I know that I'm going to make a mistake, and I know that I am not perfect.
I've
right?
made 10 today already.
Yeah, and it's I've made it with family, I've made it with friends, I've made it with strangers, I've made it in work. None of us are perfect, right? But I know, I know what God's grace is, right? That same grace can make such a difference to a first responder.
That's powerful.
None of us are perfect.
No, and that's the way we need to approach that.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
agree with you. I think that this podcast, to all those that will listen, is about realism. We're
Yeah.
not going to sugarcoat anything. And look, your tears and your emotions speak louder than any words you can have. And the thing is, remember when we sat with just somebody recently, not too long ago, you and I, and we found out that their impact.
Oh, yeah.
How many times do people go to bed at night and carry that weight of something that they never thought they would carry? They carry it on and on and on, and then all of a sudden you hear about it, and you're like, "Well, how long has that been going on?" Well, again, all I'm going to say is that it all revolves around our faith and that the grace that somebody's given us to be who we are, and that grace goes along with not just our community but to everyone.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what bothered me a little bit about what's been going on in Texas. The fact that we could start calling people out, we could start putting people down, but is that the right message? That's not what good Lord would do.
That's right.
And the good Lord also tells you to walk on a good line too. So, at the end of the day, that's part of that grace, and that's part of all the other things. And our egos get in the way sometimes,
Yeah.
and that's not the purpose of what we're doing here. Our purpose is to bring unity and compassion and empathy, but also resilient behavior.
Right.
Do you want therapeutic process or do you don't? And none of us here are like some of our therapists that are well educated and have the credentials. And then the last thing I'm going to say about this is the other thing too is that people need to understand that we're about making a difference.
Yep.
And if we don't start it here, then where is it going to start? And so for us, it's about taking care of the disadvantaged, about the hungry, about the homeless, and about all of those other things. But at the end of the day, it's also living by justice and the unifying effort of making sure, because this bothered me not too long ago too, is tearing things up and being violent and negative and all of that. That doesn't do good to anybody.
Right.
And our country right now needs to heal and it needs to move in a good direction. And that's what I would ask everyone to do by empowering one another to think about and to receive grace and go to church
Mm-hmm.
and maybe, Go to a little group that talks about the Bible and the spirituality, because that Bible tells you a lot of stories and a lot of good stories that you use every day.
Well, I can't thank you guys enough. I mean, this is, I think, going to really be inspirational as a podcast, and as we move along. And as you said, it's going to be about real. It's going to be about real scars that we live with, you know. And through God, family, and country, we're still here. We're moving forward. But one thing that I pray, and I pray daily, is that, as God said, "I'll know you by your fruit. I'll know you by your good fruit." And so I pray that that's what people see out of this facility, and hopefully multiple facilities at one day, if God blesses this the way I think He's going to, is that people see the good fruit that come out of here.
I agree.
I agree
I
too.
think it'll be awesome. So I appreciate you guys jumping on board with this. I know it's
Thank you.
we've had a lot of conversations and stuff about this, and this has been a long time coming to get this up and going. And because of your generosity, Chad, this gets to happen. And I kind of the same way. I can't wait to see what God's going to do with this. We're here for a reason. We're using our past and our traumas and stuff that God delivered us from, so that we can help others. And whether it's through the podcast, whether it's through the facility, or whatever it is, we're going to make a difference.
I'd ask anybody that's out there that hears this podcast, reach out to us. We'll have an email. You know, if you have a story to tell, you don't have to believe in God. That's not what this is about. But just come see us. You know, come listen to us, talk to us. And if you have a story to tell, first responder, veteran, that you want to share, then reach out to us. Well, you know, and again, you don't have to believe in God, but don't be scared of that Bible right there. Just come on in.
Well, big salute to both of you, man.
Well, thank you guys.
All right.
Hoorah! All right.
Thanks a lot.